Have you ever noticed how the moment you stop explaining yourself, people suddenly start paying attention? It's almost like magic. You spend months, maybe years, trying to make someone understand your choices, your boundaries, your decisions. You craft the perfect explanations. You stay up rehearsing conversations in your head. You bend over backwards to make your reasoning crystal clear, and nothing changes. They still judge you. They still question you. They still treat your decisions like they're up for debate. But then something shifts. You stop talking. You stop defending. You stop justifying. And suddenly, the entire dynamic flips. The very people who demanded explanations now seem unsettled by your silence. They start second-guessing themselves instead of you. Why? Because you've stumbled onto one of life's most powerful secrets, one that Machiavelli understood centuries ago. Power doesn't beg to be understood. It commands to be witnessed. Think about it. When was the last time you saw someone truly powerful waste their breath explaining themselves to everyone who questioned them? You haven't, because powerful people, whether they're leading nations or simply living with unshakable boundaries, they understand something most of us miss entirely. Justification isn't strength. It's a disguised plea. Every time you launch into an explanation, every time you say, "Let me tell you why I did this," or "You have to understand my perspective," what you're really saying underneath all those words is this: please approve of me. Please validate my choices. Please tell me I'm doing the right thing. And the moment those words leave your mouth, you've already surrendered something precious. You've handed someone else the throne of your own mind and asked them to rule over your decisions. Machiavelli would have seen this immediately. He would have watched you explaining yourself and recognized it for what it truly is: weakness dressed up as transparency. Because here's the uncomfortable truth we all need to face. The more you justify, the more permission you give others to sit in judgment of you. You're essentially inviting them to become the jury of your life, handing them your authority on a silver platter and waiting nervously for their verdict. Will they find your choices acceptable? Will your reasoning pass their test? And while you're standing there, vulnerable and exposed, hoping they'll understand, they're gathering power over you that you freely gave away. That's the trap. That's what keeps people stuck in endless cycles of explanation, forever seeking approval from those who were never qualified to grant it in the first place. But why do we do this? Why do we feel this overwhelming compulsion to make everyone understand? The answer goes back to childhood, to those early lessons about being a good person. You were taught that explanation equals goodness, that being understood means being accepted, that reasonable people always have reasons, and they share them freely. So you learn to narrate every decision, to justify every boundary, to prove that your choices were valid according to someone else's standards. You became addicted to the comfort that comes when people nod their heads and say, "Okay, that makes sense." And without realizing it, you turned your entire life into one long defense statement. You stopped living and started auditioning for approval that would never fully come. Here's what makes this even more fascinating. The people who justify themselves the most are often the ones with the purest intentions. They're not manipulative. They're not playing games. They genuinely want to be fair, transparent, understood. They believe that if they just explain it the right way, if they just use the right words, everyone will finally get it. But that's the tragic irony. Power doesn't reward fairness. It rewards perception, and perception is ruthless. It doesn't care about your heart or your intentions. It cares about how unshakable you appear. When you explain, you look uncertain. When you stay silent, you look sure, even if inside you're trembling with doubt. That's the essence of what Machiavelli understood about human nature. People don't judge you based on truth. They judge you based on what serves them. And silence, that mysterious refusal to justify, that serves them in a different way. It commands respect. Imagine two people in your life right now. The first one explains everything. Every decision comes with a paragraph of justification. Every boundary is softened with apologies and context. They want so desperately to be understood that they'll reshape their words 100 different ways, hoping one version finally clicks. Now imagine the second person. They make a decision, and that's it. No lengthy explanation. No defensive justification. They simply act, and their actions speak a language that needs no translation. Between these two people, who seems more in control? Who seems more dangerous in the best possible way? Who would you be more careful about challenging? The answer is always the second one. Always. Because there's something magnetic, something almost hypnotic about a person who doesn't feel the need to explain themselves. Their mystery creates authority. Their quietness makes every word they do speak land with the weight of stone. So what happens when you finally stop? What changes when you make the decision, terrifying as it might feel at first, to let your actions speak for themselves and keep your reasoning private? At first, it feels unnatural, wrong, even. You'll feel the silence pressing on you, like an unspoken tension begging to be filled. Someone questions your choice, and every fiber of your being wants to launch into explanation mode. You want to ease the discomfort. You want to smooth things over. You want to prove that you're still the reasonable, good person they've always known. But if you can resist that impulse, if you can sit with that uncomfortable silence and let it do its work, something remarkable begins to happen. The pressure that was sitting on your chest starts transferring to them instead. They start questioning themselves. Why aren't they defending themselves? Did I cross a line? Maybe my opinion doesn't matter to them as much as I thought. And that realization, that sudden awareness that you don't need their approval, that's what unsettles people most. Machiavelli understood this as the art of weaponized absence. The power of saying nothing, doing little, but making people chase your meaning. It's like emotional gravity. The less you justify, the more others orbit around your mystery. They start talking among themselves, trying to decode you, trying to fill the silence you left behind. They create stories to explain your behavior. They project their own fears and insecurities onto your blank canvas. And every second they spend analyzing you, they're putting you at the center of their attention without you having to do anything at all. You've become the main character in their mental narrative, and you achieved it not through explanation, but through deliberate restraint. The shift doesn't happen overnight, though. You'll be tested. People who are used to your explanations will demand them more loudly. They'll call you cold. They'll say you've changed, and you're being distant or secretive. They'll accuse you of thinking you're better than everyone else. But here's what's really happening beneath those accusations. You're no longer available for emotional micromanagement. You're no longer offering yourself up as a servant to everyone's emotional expectations. You're conserving your power, protecting your peace, and choosing where your energy goes. And that choice, that simple act of selection, threatens people who are comfortable with the old dynamic, where they could pull you into their chaos whenever they wanted. But watch what happens when you stay firm. When you don't bite, when you remain steady and unmoved, something clicks in their minds. They realize they can't manipulate what doesn't react. They learn that your boundaries aren't negotiable, not because you've given them a presentation on why, but because you've shown them through consistent action. Your silence becomes the message. Your absence becomes the answer. And slowly, grudgingly, they start adjusting to your new standards. The chaos that used to follow you everywhere begins to fall away. The people who thrived on argument disappear because they can't feed off your energy anymore. Your relationships become cleaner, your environment quieter, your path clearer. Not because everyone suddenly understands you, but because you stop needing them to. This is when life begins to fall into place. Not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, elegantly, without noise or debate. You stop replaying conversations in your head, trying to craft the perfect comeback or explanation. You stop lying awake, wondering if you said the right thing. You stop shape-shifting to fit into other people's comfort zones. Instead, you move through life with a kind of stillness that unnerves the restless. You walk differently. You speak differently. You no longer rush to fill the silence after you set a boundary. You let it hang in the air, heavy and final. And people feel it. They sense that something in you has fundamentally shifted. They are no longer reachable through guilt or pressure or emotional manipulation. The beautiful paradox is this: when you stop trying to make people understand you, they start understanding you better. Not because you've finally found the right words, but because your consistency starts speaking a language louder than words ever could. They realize you don't explain, not because you're arrogant, but because you're intentional. You're focused on building, not convincing. You're committed to action, not argument. Your life becomes your explanation. Your results become your defense. And when that day comes, all those words you wanted to say, all those justifications you rehearsed in the mirror, they feel completely unnecessary. Because you've discovered what Machiavelli knew all along. Silence isn't the absence of communication. It's the highest form of it. It's confidence distilled into presence. It's power refined into discipline. And it's the moment when everything truly falls into place.